have a spill that's going to happen. He's going to bring on the spill. He's effectively using it as a vote of no confidence in his leadership. He's going to quit Parliament immediately. That's what I'm being told out of the Prime Minister's bunker.
Wow.
Well, we started this day with a few uncertainties as each minute passes, drawing in towards 12 noon here in Canberra. Some of those uncertainties are being removed. Just to recap, PK, yes, this meeting is going to happen, but Andrew Probyn, or subject to verification of signatures, but Andrew Probyn just confirming to us that we now have a by-election scenario looming in Wentworth, almost certainly.
A nightmare scenario
I've double confirmed. You got a few sources there, so I feel like absolutely the Prime Minister's going to quit Parliament immediately.
Rock solid.
Rock solid.
Well,
incredible.
Holy moly! So we've got it. Okay, so let's just Whoever wins today has to face a potentially hostile Parliament on September 10.
That's before you get to the by-election.
That's before you get to the by-election, because the government now is on 75 seats. 75 seats. The Prime Minister quits immediately. What does Labor do straight away?
Well, question, PK, what does Labor do? Because the stability of the Parliament, and some people would argue of national politics, might result in Bill Shorten being asked a difficult question, which is, would you pair off against the absent Malcolm Turnbull? Or do they go for the jugular? I mean, this is a question, isn't it, for Labor? If the scenario Andrew Probyn's talking about happens on Monday the 10th of September, the test will ultimately, fairly or unfairly, be put on Bill Shorten too.
I think Labor will call for a general election. I think this is the moment. They want to seize the momentum of the moment, which is the government is a shambles. As we go to air now, there is no other way to describe what's happening. Prime Minister is about to quit the Parliament.
And this does actually affect the vote potentially today. It affects the stability of the potential candidate, or one of them in particular. This threat. He intimated earlier in the week that he would quit Parliament, but that threat was directed at no other candidate but Peter Dutton.
But where does the Governor-General step in all of this? We know he stayed in Canberra. At what point, given this new level of crisis, does he step in now to use his reserve powers to try to break this impasse?
And there doesn't have to be a by-election, because the Speaker, it's still within his powers to decide when this by-election should be. But if the Prime Minister is quitting and doesn't intend turning up...
Can I just clarify something, and I have it on very good authority. The timing, let's be very careful. The PM will quit, that is absolutely certain. The timing, not necessarily immediately. I think that's still being war-gamed.
OK, well, that's an important clarification.
It is.
For the reasons that Andrew Probyn is outlining, and that is that there are stability of government questions here, and also implications. You're suggesting, I'd just like you to tease it out a little more, Andrew, this pronouncement or announcement by the Prime Minister today regarding his own future. How does it impinge on the candidacy of Scott Morrison? I know how it affects Peter Dutton, but in what way does this play mind games for those members of the party room?
Well, if you're to tease out what he said on Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, wasn't it? He said that when it comes to Peter Dutton, he would have to demonstrate he has the support of the House. And now, it was very much a comment made about Peter Dutton. It wasn't necessarily in reference to Scott Morrison or Julie Bishop. At that stage, of course, they weren't candidates, but it was about Peter Dutton. Now, that's in reference to his own situation, but also in full knowledge that there were Nationals discussing what would happen if Peter Dutton became Prime Minister, Nationals who have been saying that they would walk. So, you know, these are tense times, but there seemed to be some mixed messages. I mean, I did ask very specifically inside the PM's bunker whether he would quit immediately, and the answer was yes. So we'll have to work out.
Well, he will announce he will quit. If I can just clarify, he will announce he will quit Parliament. In terms of the way it formally happens, as Probes knows, you know, there is obviously a process. The day he does it. Look, it'll be interesting to see how he determines that. I bet he'll be taking the counsel of people like Julie Bishop in terms of, you know, how to manage that. But he's pretty bruised by this process, I think it's fair to say.
OK, on your experience, Annabelle, what are the timing options available to the Prime Minister and member for Wentworth, Malcolm Turnbull? In reality, how quickly do you think he formalises this resignation?
We could do it straight away. I mean, he could resign from Parliament straight away. I think it will, well, this is just guesswork, but I imagine that the timing would probably be, his intentions might be influenced by the identity of the person who emerges as the new leader of the Liberal Party after this meeting that's wending its way towards being staged. I would say that his inclination to stick around and make life easier for Peter Dutton would be quantifiably different from his preparedness to stick around and make life easier for Scott Morrison.
Although he stated almost as a policy position that he doesn't think there's a place for former Prime Ministers, or shouldn't be, in the Parliament of Australia.
That's true.
He wouldn't be picking favourites there, would he?
If you don't do a double, but it's 12:20 is the word from one texter. Let me do a double check.
Yep.
It's fluid, but that's
while
10 minutes away.
PK, we are getting that confirmed from our end as well. So 12:20 is the nominated time. Set your clocks for that one. Listeners and viewers to our ABC coverage coming from Parliament House. The meeting of Liberal MPs and senators will begin in 11 minutes from now. And what that means is our cameras will hopefully start to see some movement in the corridors for you, because the normal course of action, Andrew Probyn, is that an email would be sent out now by the whips, specifically through the office of Nola Marino, the chief whip, but she's assisted, and we might see their faces later today, by deputies in the form of Bert Van Manen, Rowan Ramsey and David Bushby from the Senate. And in that party room meeting today of 84 Liberals, there will be 60 MPs from the lower house and, of course, 24 from the Senate. But, yeah, movement would be imminent, wouldn't it, Andy?
Yes, you'll see them starting to gather very shortly. They'll start coming through. Now, this does become a regular bit of the theatre, because you have early signs as to who will vote where. There'll be a bit of a funeral procession behind Malcolm Turnbull, those who've remained loyal with him to the end. You would expect, I'd say, Scott Morrison and Julie Bishop to walk alongside Malcolm Turnbull. That would signify that not only they have his support, whoever wins, but more importantly that then they don't have Peter Dutton's support. So there'll be there's always important symbolism in the walk.
If the walk in is difficult, Michael Rowland, the walk out is gut-wrenching, I suppose, for the defeated, and we've seen a lot of those.
And we've seen, and we were discussing this off air earlier, the Prime Minister displayed such a stiff upper lip at his press conference yesterday, given the enormous pressure he was under. It'll be very interesting to see how he conducts himself at his media conference this afternoon, if he does lose the Prime Ministership and is expected to leave Parliament. This will bring to an end a storied career for Malcolm Turnbull in Parliament since 2004, but let's not forget that. A great career outside as a merchant banker, a barrister. He took on the British Crown, care of the Spycatcher trial in the 1980s, and won. He's strived all of his life to be Prime Minister of Australia, and if events play out as we're expecting them to play out, he would have lasted less than 3 years in that job. So how that walkout, Greg, will be very interesting to watch, but also that media conference, whether he's surrounded by his wife Lucy and his children, like Kevin Rudd was back at that highly emotional media conference in 2010 when he was knifed. It could be a very dramatic and quite emotional afternoon.
Aged pictures coming to you from down down near the ministerial wing, and this power combination, and quite possibly Australia's 30th Prime Minister. He is at very least a contender for that office, Peter Dutton. They're walking northwards towards the front end of the building and there to turn right into the government party room.
Dean Smith, WA Liberal Senator.
Who's also swung behind Peter Dutton. Interesting in itself because, of course,
Luke Houth.
He led the same-sex marriage push. Here's
James McGrath. Zipped lips today, folks.
Christopher Pyne, probably not business as usual today, as he was quipping just 24 hours ago.
A sombre-looking James McGrath, a bit of a character, but not giving much away today.
No, well, he was one of the key desertions, wasn't he, from Malcolm Turnbull, now supporting Peter Dutton, a key plotter back in 2015, helping to install Malcolm Turnbull in the job. So when he left, it was a very big blow for Malcolm Turnbull.
Scott Morrison, let's listen. Zilch again.
On his own too.
Understand to be the rules on mobile phones as they are enforced at the moment, PK. I ask in all seriousness for two reasons. One, they seem to have been transgressed on Tuesday if they are banned. At one period in time, I think they were meant to be banned as a matter of discipline. That seems to have crept back in. But also, on getting you to answer that question, just going to observe to our audience and to our listeners today that we will be very reluctant until we got, say, 2 or 3 indications. If we are to get indications unofficially before the whips emerge, we will be deliberately slow and cautious about trying to be first with some figure or another. It's a mug's game if you get it wrong or if you are misled. There are high enough levels of distrust in this party room at present to want to ill-inform or misinform the media. Anyway, I'm just noting that we'll be cautious.
I'd love to reflect on that, yes. So for people who don't know about the way the mechanics work, you're not meant to, text out or share the answer of what the party room's decided. I mean, you're not meant to do that. And I've had MPs who, obviously have contacts in the Liberal Party room. You all do. That's our job. We have to do that. Who've said to me, look, it's pretty highly policed. I'll try to share this with you, but it's going to be very difficult because this one's going to be very highly policed.
That's right, Greg. A lot of journos here all assembled and really now just an air of anticipation about who will be Australia's 30th Prime Minister. So I guess a moment where we're all waiting, we're all on our phones trying to get information from inside that party room. As you mentioned, there's going to be a number of votes and so it may take a little while to sort through those candidates. We don't expect Malcolm Turnbull will run as he announced yesterday, so the 3 contenders, the Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, Treasurer Scott Morrison and the former Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton. So certainly a high sense of anticipation here, Greg, waiting for this news. As we've also been speaking about, a new deputy leader of the Liberal Party may also be elected today. Names such as the Energy Minister Josh Frydenberg, the former Trade Minister Steve Chobo and the former Health Minister Greg Hunt are some of those that might be interested in putting their hands up for that deputy Liberal leadership job. And of course, it's Malcolm Turnbull's last day as Prime Minister of Australia. So a really big moment here. We're all just waiting now to see that result when it comes. Behind me, you can see some journalists set up with microphones. What we're going to see in some time in the next sort of 20 minutes perhaps or half hour, Greg, is the Liberal Party whip Nola Marino will come out of the room and make the announcement of the result of those ballots for both the leadership and deputy Liberal leadership.
So the motion, the threshold question, the spill motion has been carried inside the Liberal Party room. So that answers a question we asked ourselves a few moments ago. Would they formally have one to decide whether the Prime Minister and his deputy Julie Bishop, whether their position should be vacated? Well, it turns out a ballot was held. apparently in accordance with the rules that needed to be done formally, and as you would expect, there was no stalemate around that question. Andrew Probyn, political editor, that's a bit of a no-brainer. You've got to clear that hurdle.
It is a de facto vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. That's what it is, and that is the trigger point for him stepping down permanently as leader.
Now, about the numbers we've been broadcasting that you find shocking?
I think, and we were just observing this with Barry Cassidy, it's interesting that they were still 40 MPs voted essentially against the spill, which is incredible, really. I mean, don't you think, Barry, that...
Well, do you recall three politicians, Matthias Cormann, Michaela Cash and Mitch Fifield, walked out to a news conference and said they were now prepared to vote another candidate, to vote for somebody other than Malcolm Turnbull because the numbers had moved against him. If those three had voted against the spill, it wouldn't be happening.
Well, it's odd in the extreme, isn't it? So we've spoken about these people being influential, Barry, hauling large numbers around with them. How do you make sense of they've been decidedly uninfluential, I think, if you look at those numbers?
Yeah, but also they could have been very influential. They could have prevented this happening in the first place.
In the first ballot for the leadership of the Liberal Party, she gets knocked out and they now enter into the second and final ballot for the leader's position. Now, we don't know when the whips will come out and tell us formally and officially these results. Do they deal only with the leader, or do they deal with the leader, then the deputy? We'll get to that a bit later. But confirming Australia's next Prime Minister will be either Scott Morrison or Peter Dutton. That much we do know. Here at 12:44 in Parliament House in Canberra, you're watching live and continuous coverage of a momentous occasion in national politics, where we are going to get today a 30th Prime Minister of Australia, replacing Malcolm Turnbull as the 29th. And
I think it's important to clarify what the Prime Minister's position is or will be when it happens, because I think it's important that if Malcolm Turnbull goes, then whoever wins the Prime Ministership will be leading a minority government. Now, I don't know whether that's an issue for the Governor-General or not, but the Governor-General usually wants an assurance.
Among very senior people in the Labor Party, she's gone on those bipartisan trips, we know, with Penny Wong, her shadow, and I wouldn't be surprised when there's a change of government and some of those appointments happen where the Julie Bishop is well looked after by the Labor Party. That's my tip. I think she is seen as a very, very competent person who you might see on the global stage again, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a change of government, whether she's appointed by Labor. And of course the government would be prepared if they were successful, if they were able to turn this ship around, to also look after her. But she won't be deputy. It's going to be a very different look at the leadership team. We'll see if who emerges as the deputy today, but we're not going to have a woman in the leadership team too. I think some of our viewers might like to hear us reflect on that. I think that does matter. We're going to see two men in the top job.
News here, two sources, make that three sources, so we're being cautious. Three sources are telling us that Scott Morrison has won a ballot for the Liberal leadership and therefore will become the 30th Prime Minister of Australia. Scott Morrison elected, the ABC is informed from inside the Liberal Party room, as Liberal leader and Prime Minister of Australia. Andrew Probyn. Well, exactly. Just absorb that for a moment.
Well, let's just look at what's happened. We have had guerrilla warfare on Malcolm Turnbull this week. The warfare has been led by those supporting Peter Dutton and those who are supporting Tony Abbott.
Yep. Update, 45 votes to Prime Minister designate Scott Morrison over Peter Dutton, 40 votes, 45 to 40. Barry Cassidy in Melbourne.
Well, we have a result and the winner is Bill Shorten. Look, after what they have done, I think over the last few days, it's going to be a really tough job now for Scott Morrison to pull the whole team together. But of course, I think, in my view, he's far better placed to do it than Peter Dutton, because Peter Dutton would have been seen as the guy who took ownership of the party on behalf of the right wing, whereas Scott Morrison, I think, will attempt to bring the moderates and the right wing together, and clearly that's the way the party room judged it. And the other thing that he has going for him is that he is treasurer, or was until now, and so he has that economic strength behind him, and I think it would make more sense to the public that somebody who has been serving for treasurer as long as he has been serving is now in the leadership position.
Patricia Karvelas, someone has miscalculated badly, I will put it to you, on Peter Dutton's numbers team. Something has gone, to use the cliche, horribly wrong.
Something has gone horribly wrong, and a lot of people have been telling me this week these guys are over-egging it, these guys have got terrible tactics, do they know how to count? These are the things that have been told to me from, admittedly, not the Peter Dutton camp, people who are not fans of them. Yeah, absolutely miscalculated, and here Scott Morrison has come through the middle and emerged as the new Prime Minister of Australia. It's absolutely extraordinary.
But isn't the thing that went wrong was Mitch Fifield?
Mitch Fifield
in the Dutton
switched.
camp.
He absolutely switched.
But that was, and to be fair to Mitch Fifield, he was in the Dutton camp when it was pretty much Peter Dutton versus Malcolm Turnbull. And maybe that's where the Peter Dutton people
and he'd
got
been a
ahead of
strong
themselves.
supporter of Malcolm Turnbull.
We do
They
also
got
have
ahead
to
of
remember.
themselves, and they.
We also have to remember in this circumstance that of those who effectively voted against Malcolm Turnbull on Tuesday, not all were supporting Peter Dutton. We have since confirmed that of those 35, there were Scott Morrison supporters.
Well, and does this delay any potential resignation from the Parliament now of Malcolm Turnbull? Going back to your earlier point, Greg.